Atito, welcome to the journey. I'm Leon Polam, the writer, historical researcher, and founder of Let's Drive an Indian Path. I also create GPS-triggered audio tours so that you can drive modern highways built atop ancient Indian paths. One of those tours led to the reburial of ancient Indians that I more or less found along the way. What path are we traveling today? Well, today we look at one of the busiest highways in Pennsylvania. That's right, the Pennsylvania Turnpike. The very first human feet to come to this part of Turtle Island, that's what Indians traditionally call the world, Turtle Island. Those first humans used the path that is under and sometimes beside the turnpike. If you're interested in the ways of those ancient people or the Europeans who thronged here afterwards, fasten your seatbelts. It's going to be an interesting ride. Oh, if you'd like a free audio tour so you can drive yourself into the past, I can show you where to snare a free coupon. So, let's drive an Indian path. Here we are at the Pennsylvania Turnpike entrance, just outside Pittsburgh. It's not too early to look for signs that this was once a path walked by ancient and colonial people. Wait, there's one. And it really is a sign. Looks like you're not allowed to walk any faster than 5 miles an hour on the turnpike. No, I'm kidding. Bikers aren't allowed to walk this route. It was put up to show that toll takers might be walking between the booths. Vehicles should travel no faster than 5 miles an hour through the plaza here. But the toll takers are gone. They were replaced by an automated system during the COVID pandemic. The sign and toll booths are outdated. It's just a small example of a route that's been in constant change over the past 16,000 years. Do you know how long 16,000 years is? Me neither. It's a really long time. I should point out something to people living in Pennsylvania today. Indians, Native Americans, First Nation, or whatever you want to call them, are not extinct. They were, quote unquote, removed from this area 200 years ago, but their descendants are still very much in existence. Many strive to maintain their culture in traditional ways. Mostly, it's done far from Pennsylvania. Should I be calling them Indians? What do they want to be called? Well, if they're Shawnee or Lenape or Seneca, that's what they want to be called. If you don't know their tribe, Indian is fine. At least that's what the tribal people I know say. That may well change, but for now. Christopher Columbus, of course, called the people he met here Indians because he thought he was in India. The natives didn't have a name for everyone on the continent other than people. So, Indian stuck. Well, here's a question for you. Why did Shawnee, Lenape, and Seneca bother to make regular trips on this path across a difficult wilderness? Keep in mind that they were walking. It might take them a month to go from here to the Atlantic coast. They would have said it took them a moon. Of course, the term month, comes from moon, right? Driving on this turnpike, it's going to take you, what, less than a quarter of a day? Still, I bet you take a water bottle with you. Ancient Indians would scoff at our modern preoccupation with carrying water. They thought that that's what springs and creeks were for. However, they were like hikers today in one way. They carried a little trail mix. Women dry roasted or parched corn and mixed it with maple syrup, crunchy, chewy, and sweet, A bite here and there could sustain travelers all day. Dried meat also was shredded and pounded with berries into a chewy bar of energy. If you like to talk, you wouldn't have wanted to travel with Indians. They traditionally traveled single file, some distance apart. Not good for chatting. The youngest adult male tended to lead the party. He scouted for trouble and game, and if they were not in hostile territory, he might shoot an animal to cook over an open fire. Before guns, he'd have used a bow or an atlatl. Atlatls are hooked sticks for throwing spears more effectively. On their feet, they wore buckskin moccasins. It was the preferred wilderness footwear. That was true even among settlers who first came here wearing boots. They quickly switched to Indian moccasins. Shoes with hard soles and raised heels are designed for pavement. Moccasins allowed them to walk quietly and be sure-footed on rough terrain. Indians back then probably walked faster than you do. That's because their gait was entirely different. How different could it be? Well, the first thing to touch the ground with soft-soled moccasins isn't your heel. It's your toes or the ball of your foot. You walk more like a ballerina. That allows you to stalk game quietly. It also causes you to lean forward. That makes you walk faster. It improves your posture at the same time. That's important when you're taking a long, long walk. If you didn't walk alertly through the forest, you were less likely to make it out. It's not just physical threats that could get you. Indians who follow traditional ways are attuned to spirits. Spirits are everywhere. You must respect and you must appease them. The wise one avoids trouble by pursuing balance in all things, and that includes spirits. You need to recognize the clues that they give you, and you should offer them gifts. So, back to my question. Why were these trails so well trodden? Why did the Indians cross this wilderness? Anybody? Why did they cross the wilderness? Right, to get to the other side.
The large one.
Okay. So why did they want to get to the other side? Because people over there always had something people over here didn't, and vice versa. It might be seashells, semi-precious stones, or maybe metal ore that could be worked into body ornaments. Archaeological evidence indicates that thousands of years before Europeans arrived, the 300-plus tribes living in North America were trading in such materials. They likely were exchanging far more than that, but goods made of wood, leather, or anything perishable wouldn't survive for archaeologists to find. The promise of adventure seems to have drawn native people to the trails as well. Surviving Indian legends are mostly about young men and women setting out on the trail. They often encounter shapeshifters. One can't always tell what's human or animal or plant. They might meet helpful spirits. They might meet unhelpful ones. Riddles had to be solved. Then, of course, there was another reason for traveling. There was always mating and going the distance to find someone not too closely related to you. When spring was in the air, well, Indians also set out as warriors. They set out to prove their worth on the warpath. They had to have a good story to tell when they got back home. Impressing women with war stories or travel heroics and wisdom is what men thought about as they walked and walked and walked. Now, driving an Indian path like this doesn't mean that if you stopped and dug down through the concrete, you'd eventually come to a level at which moccasins walked. You might, but it's highly unlikely. Indian paths were always pretty fuzzy routes. That's because they were always changing. Conditions might force you to go one way in the spring and another in the fall. A storm could wash out a portion. Fallen trees could send you into another valley. Bad or unfriendly spirits could move in. You want to stay clear of them. In what appears to our modern eyes as two distinct paths, well, ancient eyes saw as only one. Paths, however indistinct, likely were first hardened under the hooves of migrating caribou and bison. They were in this region back then. That's because there were glaciers just to the north in what is now New York State. People came along, not because they wanted to travel, they wanted meat. They followed the herds. In those days, if you wanted meat, well, you had to kill it. Well, I suppose you could go get someone else to do it. The tribe's best hunters gained status and favor with females if they could carry or drag portions of caribou, deer, or elk or bear home with them. Men tended to go out on paths like these to get large game. They could be gone a long time. Women, therefore, ran the villages. They seldom ventured too far from them. In this region, they farmed, killed small game, and raised babies. They decided when it was time to move the village. That could happen every year or two. Maybe game got scarce, maybe the latrines got full. Maybe spirits made them leave. Well, we'll get into spirits later. Mainly it was men who took to these paths. Maybe more than anything else, it was a warrior culture. Men often went out in spring to kill and scalp a human from another tribe. When this path became a war path, men could really be gone long, or be long gone. During most of its existence, this trail was a single lane. That lane was only wide enough for one human at a time. If someone came up from the other direction, or somebody faster than you came up from behind, you had to step aside. Then, about 300 years ago, in the early 1700s, this wilderness changed. Indians started walking beside European pack horses loaded with furs for the insatiable European market. Europe had already killed off all its fur-bearing creatures. They couldn't get enough North American furs. Animal pelts kept people both warm and dry. Remember, this was before synthetic waterproof fabrics. Beaver pelts were shipped to England, France, and Scandinavia, where they were turned into felts, often fine felts that were perfect for hats and coats and capes. Companies arranged with the Stone Age natives here to meet that demand. It changed the Indians radically. They got metal knives and metal pots that didn't break. They ditched their spears and their bows. They started carrying rifles, setting metal traps. They also became the first collectors of stone arrowheads in North America. They picked up the ones their ancestors left behind on the ground. It's not that they were interested in collecting ancient cultural antiques. They needed the flint. They needed the flint to fire their new rifles. Indians just loved European technology. They would have camped outside Apple stores to get the latest iPhone. Cell phones, of course, didn't exist, but rum did. It ruined many a young Indian and their tribes with them. This path was called the Wraystown Path. It went from the Allegheny River to a trading post, a post run by a Scot named John Ray. Ray's post became what we now call Bedford. The Wraystown Path continued east well past Bedford. If you went far enough, though, most of the people walking it called it the Allegheny Path. They weren't going to Ray's trading post. They had plenty of trading posts closer to the seaports, back east. Tribes walking this pass from the east were headed for tribes along the Allegheny River, hence the name Allegheny Path. Allegheny Avenue in Center City, Philadelphia, lies atop that path today. Well, that's it for this post. I hope you saw something or heard something that you didn't know about before. And I hope it helps you better understand an ancient culture that's still very much in existence. In the next post, I tell you how the Indians stayed warm. I talk about spirits that surround us and how not to get lost. If you'd like to listen to these tales of the past while actually driving the turnpike, I have GPS-triggered audio tours available on the voice map link that's listed in the description below. Silanoka Kanola. That's Shawnee for Again We Will See Each Other. I certainly hope so.